The white horse stood at the far end of the field when the baby arrived. His name was Lumen. He wasn't fast anymore. He wasn't wild. He was calm, almost thoughtful, with a coat so white it seemed to hold the morning light. For years, Lumen had lived quietly on this farm, watching seasons change and people come and go. He was a silent fixture, a part of the landscape. But on this particular morning, something in the air felt different. A new chapter was beginning, not just for the family in the farmhouse, but for him too. Inside, baby Elliot slept peacefully in his mother's arms. The house was filled with the soft sounds of a newborn gentle breathing, the tiny rustle of a blanket. These were sounds that carried on the breeze, subtle shifts in the atmosphere of the farm. Out in the pasture, Lumen lifted his head. He didn't neigh. He didn't move closer. He just watched, his ears angled toward the house. It was as if the air itself had changed its tune, and he was the only one listening intently to the new melody. A few days later, Elliot's parents brought him outside for the first time. The world was new to him, full of strange light and unfamiliar scents. They stopped near the wooden fence that separated the lawn from the pasture. Lumen, who had been grazing peacefully, took a step forward. It was a slow, deliberate movement, then another. He walked gently, without a hint of hurry, until he reached the fence. He lowered his great head, his nostrils flaring slightly, until his nose was just inches from the baby's soft blanket. A puff of warm breath, a moment of quiet curiosity. In his carrier, Elliot stirred, his tiny features shifting. And then, he smiled. It wasn't a laugh, not yet. It was a calm, peaceful smile, a silent acknowledgement. Lumen stayed perfectly still, his dark eyes soft. That was the moment it began. From that day on, their routine was set. Whenever Elliot was outside, nestled in a carrier or lying on a blanket in the shade, Lumen would stay close. He never crowded the fence, never tried to touch the baby. He was simply present, a quiet guardian. When the wind rustled the leaves in the tall oak trees, Lumen stood firm, a mountain of white against the green. When a flock of birds flew overhead, Elliot would watch them with wide, curious eyes, and Lumen, in turn, would watch Elliot. They shared something rare and profound, a silence that felt full, a companionship that needed no words. As the weeks turned into a month, Elliot's parents noticed a change. The baby, who could sometimes be fussy indoors, grew calmer when he was outside. He slept better near the pasture, his breathing deep and even. He rested more easily with Lumen's steady presence just across the fence. The old horse seemed to understand his role perfectly. He moved with a slow grace, never making a sudden sound or movement that might startle the baby. If Elliot cried, a soft whimper that drifted on the air, Lumen would shift his weight and lower his head, as if to say, "I'm here." He wasn't trying to fix anything, he was just being there. Visitors to the farm didn't see anything special at first. "Oh, a baby and a horse," they'd say, smiling politely before turning their attention elsewhere. It was a common country scene, but the parents saw more. They saw the subtle magic unfolding day by day. They noticed how Elliot's breathing would steady and deepen when Lumen was near. They saw his tiny clenched fists relax. And they saw Lumen, who would wait patiently by the fence every morning, always in the same spot as if expecting his small friend. This wasn't just a horse in a field. This was a friend keeping a vigil. Time passed softly, marked by the changing length of the shadows across the grass. The months went by and Elliot learned to sit up on his own, his back straight as he watched the world from his blanket. Then he learned to crawl, his small hands and knees pressing into the cool earth, always making his way toward the fence. Lumen followed his every movement with a careful gaze, matching the baby's slow pace. When Elliot finally pulled himself up, his hands gripping the rough wood of the fence, and took his first wobbly steps, Lumen stood very still. He hadn't been told to, he just knew. It was a moment that demanded stillness, a quiet celebration. There was no dramatic rescue. No moment of danger where the horse saved the child. Their story wasn't a headline. It was something quieter, deeper. It was a story written in shared mornings and shared sunsets. A child growing, learning the world one small discovery at a time. A horse aging, his movements growing slower but his presence never wavering. They grew together, their lives intertwined in the simple rhythm of farm life. Years later, Elliot was a boy. He was big enough to lean against the fence, his head resting on the top rail as he told Lumen stories. They were children's stories, full of mismatched ideas and nonsensical adventures, but Lumen listened as if every word mattered. The old white horse no longer ran across the field. His galloping days were a distant memory. But he stayed. He always stayed. That was his promise, unspoken but unbreakable. Picture the scene now, bathed in the golden light of a setting sun. The field is a sea of amber. Elliot, tired from a day of play, sits in the grass, his eyelids growing heavy as he leans against the familiar fence post and drifts off to sleep. Nearby, Lumen stands, his slow, steady breaths rising and falling like a gentle tide. Two lives on two very different paths, connected by one quiet, unwavering bond. Not all love needs to shout. Not all love saves lives. Some love, the truest kind, simply stays. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing for more.